The day before yesterday, Angela Merkel gave the commencement speech at Harvard University. I will go with you through the speech and share with you my thoughts and give you some background information about what she says, what she does not say, and where she openly lies to you. After a pompous introduction, she quotes Hermann Hesse, a poet.
The German writer Hermann Hesse had some wonderful words for such a situation in life. I'd like to quote him and then continue in my native language. Hermann Hesse schrieb, jedem Anfang wohnt ein Zauber inne, der uns beschützt und der uns hilft zu leben.
Hermann Hesse wrote, in all beginnings dwells a magic force for guarding us and helping us to live.
A quote that absolutely says nothing at all. It reflects a large thing that you have probably noticed about Europe. There's a lot of pseudo-intellectualism. People quote the silverbacks they believe are smarter than them or are smarter than the average citizen, and for no reason at all. It is clear why that quote is relevant to anything around it. So they want to sound as smart as English speakers who, quote Churchill because he said something witty, and the quote in itself is witty, and that's why you like quoting it. And they just do so. Their imitation is Goethe said, "Let's do the gardening," and Hermann Hesse said, "In every beginning dwells a magic." That is not very memorable. There is no wisdom in it. There's absolutely nothing why you should quote that, unless you want to sound smarter than you are. And this is a cultural feature of Europe and part of its decline. And then she continues speaking German, which is okay. But it also reflects on something bigger. She grew up in East Germany, and many people of her generation do not speak English. So if for anybody else in that position would not be able to continue the speech in English, that would be okay. But Angela Merkel had the privilege to grow up with a mother who was an English teacher. Full disclosure, my parents do not speak English, neither. So there is this, this woman who is supposedly intellectually superior to all of us, who does not speak the main language of the Western world, and with the best starting conditions for doing so. And the reason is that she was not Western-minded. And at the very beginning of her chancellorship, her minions told everybody her Russian is better. To be honest, her Russian is also very poor. You see her with a translator all the step on the way whenever she is around Russians.
I grew up in East Germany, in the GDR, the part of my country which was not free at that time, in a dictatorship.
Menschen wurden unterdrückt und überwacht.
People were oppressed and under state surveillance.
Politische Gegner wurden verfolgt.
Political dissidents were persecuted.
Die Regierung der DDR hatte Angst, dass das Volk weglaufen würde in die Freiheit.
The East German government was afraid that the people would flee to freedom.
Deshalb hat sie die Berliner Mauer gebaut. Sie war aus Beton und Stahl.
And that's why it built the Berlin Wall, a wall made of concrete and steel.
I include this footage for the sake of honesty. She presents her upbringing in East Germany as one in an unfree country, in a dictatorship, and she gives the impression that she dislikes it.
Ich wohnte in der Nähe der Berliner Mauer.
I lived near the Berlin Wall.
Auf dem Heimweg von meinem Institut ging ich täglich auf sie zu.
I walked towards it every day on my way home from my institute.
Dahinter lag West-Berlin, die Freiheit.
Behind it lay West Berlin, freedom.
Und jeden Tag, wenn ich der Mauer schon ganz nahe gekommen war, musste ich im letzten Moment abbiegen zu meiner Wohnung.
And every day, when I was very close to the wall, I had to turn away at the last minute in order to head towards my apartment.
Jeden Tag musste ich kurz vor der Freiheit abbiegen.
Every day, I had to turn away from freedom at the last minute.
Wie oft habe ich gedacht, das halte ich nicht aus. Es war wirklich frustrierend.
I don't know how often I thought that I just couldn't take it anymore. It was so frustrating.
Then she tries to shift the topic to the one that she actually wants to talk about, namely Donald Trump and his wall on the southern border. Of course, she cannot just flat out say that she somehow compares locking up the own people, the government oppressing the own people so much that they want to flee in such large numbers that you have to basically lock them up to stop the bleeding out of your country. But this was the reality. The wall was a symptom of a harsh dictatorship. She admitted that her home was a dictatorship, but then she shifts the focus on that symptom, on that wall, which has become a symbol of it for many reasons.
Ich war keine Dissidentin.
Now, I was not a dissident.
Ich bin nicht gegen die Mauer angerannt.
I didn't run up and bang against the wall.
And now we are getting a bit closer to the truth, because what she had not told you so far is that this free country behind the wall is the country where she was born. Angela Merkel was born in Hamburg, West Germany, and her father, a Lutheran priest, moved the family to the east because he believed he could combine the Christian faith with communism, a mindset that seems to be echoed by the Catholic Pope right now. It was there that his family built strong ties with the leadership of the East German dictatorship. Angela Merkel grew up knowing a lot of the high-ups in society back then, and she was not a low-ranking, downtrodden member of that society.
Which this wall couldn't do during all of those years.
Mir meine eigenen inneren Grenzen vorzugeben.
It couldn't impose limits on my inner thoughts.
Meine Persönlichkeit, meine Fantasie, meine Sehnsüchte, all das konnten Verbote und Zwang nicht begrenzen.
My personality, my imagination, my dreams and desires, prohibitions or coercion couldn't limit any of that.
This comes from a woman who seems to do everything that other people's thoughts are limited. She's caught on hot mic talking to Mark Zuckerberg to do something about hate speech.
What exactly happened here, Hans?
Well, the German press is describing it as a table microphone. And what the table microphone picked up was Merkel sort of muffledly asking a question to Zuckerberg. And then you hear Zuckerberg, and it's on this issue of what Facebook is going to do about monitoring, policing, racist, xenophobic comments about refugees here in Germany. It's a big issue. We hear for Zuckerberg's response pretty clearly on the tape, or at least people who are listening it did. He said, we need to do some work. And then, Guy, there's the Merkel follow-up. She basically asked the same question again, says, but you're working on this. And Zuckerberg can only say yes.
She also uses the intelligence agency Verfassungsschutz to go after completely harmless groups like the Generation Identity for their thought crimes and so on. So this woman claims to have been internally free in a dictatorship. That's ludicrous. And the reality is, as she is happy to admit actually, that when the wall fell that very day, she was sitting in the sauna. She sat in the sauna and was not protesting on the streets at all.
And the relationship between Germans and Americans too demonstrates how former wartime enemies can become friends.
Ganz wesentlich. Und ganz wesentlich hat dazu der Plan von George Marshall beigetragen, den er hier 1947 bei einer Commencement Speech verkündete.
It was George Marshall who gave a crucial contribution to this through the plan he announced at the commencement ceremonies in 1947 in this very place.
Of course, it was not the Marshall Plan or any foreign aid that helped back Germany on its feet. It was the Wirtschaftswunder. It was the liberalization, the deregulation that was instated by Ludwig Erhard, who was at some times the economic advisor, the Minister of Economics, and later the Chancellor of the German government. He took over the National Socialist economy, which was setting the prices, limiting the products that could be produced, telling people what they may buy and sell, and so on. It was a strongly regulated socialist economy that was then turned into a free market economy for the time of the boom that was, well known worldwide as the Wirtschaftswunder. In reality, all other countries in Europe received far more donations from America than Germany, and still Germany did well because of the deregulation.
I will therefore do everything in my power to ensure that Germany, my country, will achieve climate neutrality by 2050.
Is she now actually stepping down or not? It is not quite clear. I think she is smart enough to recognize that she will not live until 2050. However, I have the impression that we see something happening like a stepstone situation, like the Lenin-Stalin thing. Lenin is often seen as the good guy or the lesser evil, but he was actually laying all the foundations, prepared all the structures that could then used by his successor to commit all these atrocities. And Angela Merkel has reintroduced surveillance, the bullying of dissidents, and a number of other authoritarian methods that will ultimately come to bad end. And I think she will not experience the consequences of her politics herself. She will retire, maybe she will leave the country at some point, but the consequences will still be the consequences of her politics. Likewise, the Stalinism was the consequence of the Lenin dictatorship.
The second thought I want to share with you is therefore,
mehr denn je müssen wir multilateral statt unilateral denken und handeln.
more than ever, our way of thinking and our actions have to be multilateral rather than unilateral.
Global statt national.
Global rather than national.
Weltoffen statt isolationistisch.
Outward looking rather than isolationist.
It is quite astonishing how phraseology, framing, and propaganda techniques have made it happen that a German telling Americans that, bringing the entire world under the control of their mind is a good thing, and that being in lockstep and have no differing views and differing interests and so on were kind of a cuddly, nice, sweet idea. It sounds very, very strange that everybody is now talking to America, how America should not think of its own interests, and let's just step back and so on. Strange. Why do we actually have to kowtow to all these other primitive countries who are much less developed, have much less freedom, have much less intellectual power, are not as technologically advanced, and so on? Why do we actually have to kowtow to the misogyny of the Arab world and the anti-intellectualism of the Germans and the mafia of the Russians and so on? Why do we have to, cooperate and be nice and cuddly and don't talk openly about the differences of our interests? And, why is it so difficult for those minor cultures, and I'm very racist right now, why is it that these minor cultures cannot just learn from America? Why does America have to, take itself back and leave more room for the Russian mafia, the German anti-intellectual commies, and the Arabic Islam nonsense? Why does America have to step back? Why don't they step back?
And that is the third thought I wish to share with you today.
Setzen wir die Regeln der Technik oder bestimmt die Technik unser Zusammenleben?
Are we laying down the rules for technology, or is technology dictating how we interact?
And more anti-intellectualism here. She is talking about technology and how she was using an old IBM copy mainframe from the Soviet Union to write a dissertation, while everybody in the audience has a smartphone that is powering higher than her old computer, and probably is reading Breitbart while she is reading her nonsense. But what really shines through here is this Mary Shelley, Frankenstein's monster approach. The dumb people are sometimes afraid of the smart people, and that has been the case since the 19th century. And it has been very dominant back then, and it is coming back. And I see a retreat of our culture right now. And she is referencing to the same fear, the fear of the dumb, who do not understand really what the smart people are doing. Actually, since the Bronze Age, our culture is diversifying, or mankind is specializing. There were, people who are good at, bringing up cattle that behaves well enough to be controlled. Then there were specialists for metalwork. Some others were good in pottery. Since the Bronze Age, we have actually learned that some people are smarter in doing this or that than other people. And we had plenty of time to actually overcome this fear. Okay, you can't maybe work that metal the same way some other person can. But that does not mean the other person is a magician and that you should burn the witch. We had plenty of times when you know from the Middle Ages that we fell back, we plummeted back into that mode again and again. And I think this is what we see right now. And Angela Merkel is the forerunner of all of this, of course, again. I do not believe for a second that she believes that technology is a danger and that we must ward ourselves against it. I just think she is very good at playing with people's fears. Her entire government is based on fear-mongering. Russians are coming, or the Nazis are coming, or the climate change will burn us all. I mean, there was a segment of her talking about how the climate change is man-made and is going to destroy us, but that is so dull. I do not even want to show you that segment. It's irrelevant. But she is a specialist in playing with all fears that she can sense, and one of the tools or the fears she sniffs from the air is that people are afraid of smart people doing something that they do not understand. And what we may see in future is another witch hunt, and quite surely one, that people who do something that is smart, that is unexpected, will be harassed. And we have now even a discussion about a potential commissioner about a federal commissioner on loneliness. So people should not be left alone for too long. They should not tinker on something for too long. They should be disturbed by some other person once in a while, to avoid that people have thoughts of their own. And this is the fight of the dumb against the smart, and she is using this fear that is already emerging.
If we respect other people's history, traditions, religion, and identity,
wenn wir fest zu unseren unveräußerlichen Werten stehen und genau danach handeln.
If we hold fast to our inalienable values and act in accordance with them.
What she does not tell the audience is that her government is actually surveying the generation identity that has no other objectives than to preserve the identity, the tradition, and the culture of the countries, of the diverse countries of Europe. So it's very strange that everybody is applauding to her giving lip service to values that she obviously does not cherish, and that her government actively tries to suppress.
That requires us not to describe lies as truth and truth as lies.
This is incredibly rich of her. Her government is the master of telling nonsense. She herself was saying, for example, that she had seen multiple videos of people in Chemnitz chasing or manhunting foreigners, when then the media presented only one video again and again and again that showed whatever, but not a manhunt and not a chase of an immigrant. So she spoke, and repeatedly so, about multiple videos showing something that not even the one video that was finally presented displayed. There is, I mean, this is a very common example for her dishonesty, but it goes on and on and on. And it's really that Angela Merkel is not really often on camera. Instead, she has her minions talk for her. And what you see most often is that they lie on her behalf. And it becomes difficult to lay the responsibility to her. But her entire reign is built on incredibly dumb lies. It's like the Washington Post speaking of democracy dies in the dark, and while they and their like-minded people are still controlling the entire press plus the major news channels. It's incredible dishonesty, and we have a lot of German government officials that claim that Poland and Hungary have somewhat fallen into a dictatorship. However, they never go into any detail to explain that allegation. And if it were serious, and I'm very keen to listen to really everybody and his concerns, and I really do not want to play down something that I do not know. I mean, if there is corruption and so on going on, I do want to know. I absolutely want to be as fair and honest as possible, no matter what side does what. But as far as I can tell, Germany is far more down the road of becoming an actual dictatorship than any of these countries.
Das Loslassen des Alten gehört zum Neuanfang dazu.
Letting go of the old is part of a new beginning.
Es gibt keinen Anfang ohne ein Ende.
There is no beginning without an end.
Keinen Tag ohne Nacht.
No day without night.
Kein Leben ohne den Tod.
No life without death.
Unser ganzes Leben besteht aus der Differenz, aus dem Unterschied zwischen dem Beginnen und dem Beenden.
Our whole life consists of the difference, the space between beginning and ending.
Das, was dazwischen liegt, nennen wir Leben und Erfahrung.
It is what lies in between that we call life and experience.
Ich glaube, dass wir immer wieder bereit sein müssen, Dinge zu beenden, um den Zauber des Anfangs zu spüren und Chancen wirklich zu nutzen.
I believe that time and time again, we need to be prepared to keep bringing things to an end in order to feel the magic of new beginnings and to make the most of opportunities.
Now she comes back to her Hermann Hesse twinkle magic quote. In every beginning is some magic, and for every beginning there needs an ending. And what she is referring to here is unknown to the audience, and that's probably better because that is actually more divisive than she is happy to admit in this celebratory hour. She is ending all stable electricity supply at this point in time. We have contracts that will power off the nuclear power stations, and she's now also telling everybody that we have to leave coal. So without nuclear energy and without coal, what you have left as a stable energy supply is gas from Russia and maybe some oil. Basically, she has signed all sort of contracts to end this and to end that, whatever people protest against. She will retire, and we will have shortages. We already see elderly people dying in their homes because they cannot turn on the heater anymore. The electricity prices are higher than in any other European nation, and that literally means that people freeze to death in the winter months. So that is a new twinkle, a new beginning, awaiting for all of us, thanks to her shutting down all our power plants.
That's why I want to leave this wish with you. Tear down walls of ignorance and narrow-mindedness, for nothing has to stay as it is.
It is enormously hypocritical of her to quote Ronald Reagan and pretend that she was about tearing down walls. When Reagan used that phrase, he was actually speaking about the entire dictatorship behind that wall. And he was about freeing the people in Russia and in Poland and Hungary and so forth. Angela Merkel just offers that image of the wall to rally the political left against Donald Trump, who wants to build a border wall, and also to speak about the supposed narrow-mindedness of the conservative side. That's quite interesting because even liberals today, like Bill Maher, Nadine Strossen, even David Peckman, who is one of these few actually smart and I think honest people on the left. Yes, they are all happy to admit that it is now the political left rather than the political right that is closed-minded, that does not speak to people, that tries to censor people, and so on. So it is very hypocritical of her to speak about walls in our minds and how everybody else is restricted, and that we must tear down those walls from in other people's minds. That's quite ludicrous. So that was it for today, and I see you soon. Bye.